from $2.5 million to $100 million in 13 years. He's here to share insights on how to take control of anxiety. Please welcome Mike Wood. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. I'm excited.
My pleasure. I love that wallpaper. How did you choose that one?
It's my wife's podcast room. Well, it's my wife's podcast room. I got to just steal hers when I'm at the house. I'm not trying to I'm very secure in my manhood, I guess. That's the way I say that.
Well, I have a daughter, and when she was younger, she wanted to put the makeup and the lipstick on me. And I said, sweetheart, go for it. Dad's a real man. Yeah. He can wear makeup. He can wear lipstick. He's right. A real man.
Yeah, that's great. That's the way it's supposed to be.
It is. It is. It's interesting when we raise children, we start to, I think, have more compassion for ourselves, but also have more compassion for others. And the reason why I say that is we get older, we get a little bit grey, our beards get a little bit longer, and we forget that we were once a child, and we forget that everybody else was a child. And I look at my children, and I think that that growth period comes with so many growing pains. You know, sometimes my daughter gets up in the morning, she's like, oh, Dad, my body hurts. You know, the bones are growing, the body's growing. But also she'll come home with the relationship pains. You know, she'll be deceived by a friend at school. Somebody will spread a rumor, all the things that we go through. But you see it for the first time again. And it ignites those old memories, and you think, wow, I went through that too. And even at 46 and my daughter's 13, we don't want to minimize it because we're going to have that many times, but it's also understanding what they're going through, we went through. We're going through it with them, but it happens to us every day, and we've got to get rid of those pressures. And that pressure for a lot of people ends up in anxiety. You know, they start to worry about these things too much. And I know this is an area of your specialization, and I want to get back to that to discuss anxiety because everybody knows what it is.
Yeah, we all experience it for sure. And you're right to say that it typically starts with challenging experiences from our childhood. I mean, that's the root cause of it. Most folks deal with the symptoms rather than get to the root cause of it, and that's really what I'm trying to do is help folks get to the root cause of those of the depression and the anxiety, so we could be free from it and just live and just hang out with your daughter, let her put makeup on you.
And it builds up over time. From my perspective, I watch these incidents. It's just incremental, little bit by little bit. The pressure builds up, and they're going through it in real time. And we went through it in real time, but as we get older, we're very good at repressing things. I'm too busy to deal with that now. I'm just going to bury it beneath the surface. I'm just going to sweep it under the rug. But at 46, sometimes we realize we've been doing that for 30 years. And there's one little trigger and everything comes back up, and you think, gee, where did that come from? 30 years ago, it can't be real. I'm a businessman. I run a successful business. I shouldn't be feeling that. I'm almighty, powerful. I lead people.
You know,
we're human.
Exactly. And you know, the subconscious mind is number one's job is to protect us. And that's what's really happening. And the problem is the subconscious mind is working against us instead of for us, because we're running on a bunch of programs that we're not aligned with. We're running on programs that were created by a 5-year-old little boy, a 5-year-old little girl, and we didn't have enough life experience to create those core beliefs and you know, and then live off of them because they just don't align. I'll give you a quick example. So I learned how to read. Uh, I didn't know how to read past the second grade level until I was 25 years old. I learned how to read. I took it upon myself to learn how to read at that point. But I created an old negative core belief when I was 5 years old, and it stuck with me my entire life until I was 47 years old. And that old core belief was created when I was 5 years old, and my teacher couldn't get me to spell Michael. When I was, she, I noticed that she was getting frustrated with me, and I didn't understand why. And then I realized that all the other kids in class had already spelt their name, and so she started asking me to spell Mike instead of Michael. We'll just try this instead. And in that moment, I got into an elevated emotional state with a clear intention that I wasn't as smart as the other kids. And so that became a program that I was running on for 45 years. And it didn't matter. Once at 25 years old I learned how to read, and it didn't matter. That program was still running. You can't consciously say, "Hey, I'm smart now, I could read," or "Hey, I've accomplished A, B, and C. All of this is fine." It doesn't matter. The subconscious mind was programmed, and once it's programmed, it has to be reprogrammed, or it's going to continue to produce the same results. It's same way we learned how to walk when we were 1 years old, and we never think about walking again. It's the same thing. Subconscious mind is extremely powerful. And the beautiful thing is the subconscious mind also has no concept of time, and it doesn't know a real event versus an imagined one. So I was able to go back at 47 years old, go back with my imagination, close my eyes, and imagine that I was back there in that class with that teacher, and reframe that entire situation with compassion and love and forgiveness. Forgiveness is the big key here. I had to forgive the teacher, I had to forgive the students for laughing, and I had to forgive myself for just not understanding and processing that information very well. And then the subconscious mind just lets it go. It just there's nothing to protect me from, and so the subconscious mind's not going to hold on to it. And so now the root cause of all those negative thoughts that I'd had for 45 years was gone. And it's a liberating thing to go through, and I just want to share it with as many people as I can.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. You mentioned year 2. My boy Caesar is in year 3, and
Yeah.
he's been studying earthquakes. So on the walk to school this morning, it's around about 15 minutes. He's downloaded to me everything that he can possibly download in 15 minutes about earthquakes. He gave me the
Mm.
times, the dates, the amount of deaths, the magnitude, the
Wow.
level of the earthquake. And he's just piling on this information on me. And I'm starting to feel anxious, going, I don't think I want to think about earthquakes right now. And then he said, Dad, we had one last year, this month, 2024. And it was the last big one like that was in 1999. And we're going to have one every 30 years. And I started to notice the pattern. He's had an earthquake experience here in 2024. It's now 2026. But then he's also predicting the ones that are come in the future, because
Yeah.
he's done the research and it's going to be a 30-year cycle and it's getting close. But
Yeah.
he's also studied history. And so he's also filling in everything that came before him. And as he was filling me in on the past, I was starting to feel anxious, thinking, I know it's going to happen at some stage, but do I really want to feel that way? And it was just the information, and it started to trigger off other earthquake experiences for me.
Yeah.
And I feel a little bit numb when it comes to earthquakes here. I've been many times in my office and I start to feel dizzy. I start to feel vertigo, and my clients will say, are you okay? And I go, oh, we're having an earthquake. They're like, do you want to get off the call? I said, well, I'm on the 12th floor, and if the 15th floor collapses on me, it doesn't matter if I'm under the table or not. I'll just keep talking. But the point I want to make is that, Caesar's just here in this 8-year zone of life, and
Yeah.
he's concerned about it, but he also has the ability to think about it and bring the past into his present, but also that present into the future. And it's like anxiety and anticipation is
Yeah.
already there.
Yeah, so that last, I would be willing to bet you that last earthquake that he experienced got him into an elevated emotional state. That opens up the subconscious mind. And then the clear intention was he was scared. It got left feeling uneasy, not safe, and subconscious mind now holds on to it. It's got it in the fear bucket. It ain't letting go. So
Mm.
he's just gonna reel on that until it gets put back in a safe, out of that fear bucket into the love bucket, and it's the subconscious minds. That's its job. Keep them alive. It's doing that job.
The earthquake we had in 2024, for me, was the biggest one I had experienced. And I can remember all the components. I can remember walking home from school and seeing things fall off the side of the building. I could hear
Wow.
what sounded like bombs dropping because these big marble tiles were falling off the side of my building and hitting the ground. Boom. I can remember what it looked
Dang.
like. I could see the top of the building. Now, in my mind, it looked like it was swinging about 2 meters like this. In reality, it might have been half a meter, but in my mind, it was 2 meters. My building was swinging. And I ran home and the tiles were cracked. Things were still falling off the wall. And I thought, I can't go in the elevator. I've got to take the stairs. And I look at the stairs and there's a big crack in the emergency stairs. And I'm thinking, this is not good. This is not safe. And I walk in there and the panic kicked in. The claustrophobia kicked in. And now I've got to go up 12 flights of stairs. But the adrenaline's kicked in and I'm going, and the whole world's getting smaller, like Alice in Wonderland. The big doors
Yeah.
down to the small doors. And I get there and I bring my wife back downstairs. And then once we got out of our apartment back onto the ground floor, the body and the fear response become physical. And
Mhm.
the heart rate was elevated, the body was tense. And then by that night, my wife and I had broken out in hives. Our whole body
Mhm.
was just hives. And we're thinking, what's happened? We're at our cousin's house. Hasn't she cleaned? Automatically, we forgot about the earthquake, but now we've got hives
Yeah.
and we think it's a bed bug or something. But the body's response was so intense. And now, if there is an earthquake, I feel I get dragged back to that moment in a split second.
Mhm. Yep.
All that stuff comes back up.
Yep. It doesn't go anywhere. It gets programmed, and this is such valuable information for everybody to understand. If you could go back to your childhood and think of any moment like an earthquake, like a moment where you were embarrassed, where somebody was bullying you, where anything that got you into an elevated emotional state, and then it was a fearful thing, a negative experience, there is a program associated with it. And what that program is whatever emotion you were left feeling. Now it's programmed, and the subconscious mind doesn't have any concept of time. It is always now. It happened in the present moment and it is still happening right now. So at some level, it's still sitting there. All it needs is any kind of a trigger and it pops back up. I've been writing a book, and as I was editing it, and I put it in my ear because my reading comprehension is still not the best. And I put it in Speechify and then I'd have it read it back to me. And so I could edit it a little bit better. And listening to some of the words, because I talk about my life in there a little bit, and it would trigger things. And it was like, wow, like this is hitting me, and I'm just because I'm listening to it, just like your son talking to you about the earthquake. He's triggering that old latent energy in you, that and then here it goes, it flares up. And what I've learned over time is that this is now a gift for me, because I've rewritten over 200 of these with help and then now on my own. And every time something bubbles up and I have some type of a flare up of anxiety or something, I'm like, yes, all right, let's process this. Where is this coming from? Hopefully I have time to process it and track it back down to its source, because that's not always the easiest thing. But it's a gift, because now I'm going to let go of a little bit more of the root cause of the noise in my head that drives us all crazy.
Mm, mm. You mentioned before about forgiveness.
Yeah.
In your opinion, do you think it's easier to forgive others or is it harder to forgive ourselves? What's your take on that?
You know, it shifts with people, but most people, it's harder to forgive ourselves. It's easy, generally easy for most people to forgive others, but it's very, very challenging to forgive ourselves. We One thing that I found though is pretty powerful and beautiful is at this point in my life and with everything that I've experienced, I believe that we're all one and we're all connected. And it's very hard to forgive myself for the longest time. And so I started a daily practice where I would forgive everyone for everything all day long. It didn't matter what anybody was doing. I just made it a daily practice. So if somebody cut me off in traffic, I forgive them. You know, I would make up some story. Their kid is sick and they got to get home. I hope they make it home safe. I forgive them. And I made it a daily practice where all day long I'm forgiving people. And after about 6 months of doing that, I would catch myself getting mad at myself for making this comment or make that or making mistakes. We all make mistakes, especially when we become aware of what we're doing constantly and we're trying to be better. It hits. It hits hard, and you don't want to hurt nobody, and you slip up from time to time, and you just wish you could have a redo. And what I realized somewhere along the line is that my brain just said, wait a minute, you've been forgiving everybody else for all of these things. What about you? And then I was able to start getting a little bit deeper and forgiving myself for some of those little minor things that just happen. Um, and I think it's very, very common for folks to have a hard time forgiving themselves.
Mm. I think we find very interesting ways to punish ourselves that seem very subtle. And I
Yeah.
think the key descriptor is self sabotage. We sabotage our own success as a way of punishing ourselves.
Yep.
And I think
And
this is a challenge because when we grow up in the school system, we make a mistake and we get that red cross next to the
yes,
response.
I got a lot of
It's like,
those.
yeah, you're bad. You've been punished. We're going to make a fool of you. We're going to give you a D minus. And so the teacher punishes us. In a way, we get that red X. And then we finish school and there's nobody left to punish us anymore. So we better find a way to punish ourselves. And I think people sabotage their own success. In a way that I see it is they set goals. They have these aims, these hopes, these wishes, ambitions. They set a goal, but they don't act on it. Or they act a little bit and then they convince themselves that I'm not good enough. I'm not smart
Yep.
enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not worthy enough.
Yep.
So I better quit. And it's a very subtle way of self punishment. You know, I'm flawed. I must not deserve this. So I better punish
Yep.
myself by not allowing myself to have this beautiful reward.
So
But
I
it would
would
make sense to
argue,
do that if you couldn't forgive yourself.
well, yes, but I would argue that that is coming from old negative core beliefs, and along with the forgiveness as well. But so what I learned as I went through this journey of rewriting old negative core beliefs is they fall into four major categories: stupid, ugly, unworthy, and unlovable. So if we all, to your
Is that
point
Rocky,
that
is
you
it?
were just making, it is. It's my reminder to breathe. I set a reminder all day long to stop and take in the moment. So air in my
Enjoy.
lungs.
Well,
Yes, it's beautiful.
interesting thing about breathing, people forget about it. And
Yeah, we
if
do.
we go without oxygen for 3 minutes, we're brain dead. You can go without
Yeah.
sleep for about 7 days. You can go without water for about 13 or 14 days. You can go without food for about 40 days. But
Yeah.
breathing, if you don't breathe for 3 minutes, brain dead.
Yeah. And another great fact about breathing is, you have, I don't know how many organs in your body, 12, 13 major organs, and your lungs are the only one that you could take manual control over, and they can influence every other organ in your body. So it's a powerful thing.
Mhm. And I learned something else recently, that we actually breathe through our blood.
Yes, through our
Oh, I
skin.
heard that and went, oh wow, because the air gets sucked in through the lungs, gets into the blood, and then the
Yeah.
blood spreads it out to all of those organs. It was
Mhm.
Dr. Bruce Lipton, and he says that blood is the emotional river of the body. So even things like oxygen goes into the blood, goes to all the organs, but all the emotions also get into the bloodstream and get pumped into all those big major organ systems.
Yeah.
And I heard that and I went, oh wow. No wonder I feel anxious, not just in here, but everywhere in the body. It's weird,
Yeah.
people who have got anxiety, they know that I don't need to go to the bathroom, but I feel anxious and now I think I'm going to pee my pants. I think I'm going to poo myself. It's hit the organs.
Yeah.
Sometimes the blood feels like it's drained out of the head, goes out of the stomach, and it goes down to those big quadriceps. And it's like I want to run away. The anxiety kicks in, and all I
Yeah.
can think about doing is running away. But we better
It
get
goes
back to
back
what
to
we're
those
talking
old.
about.
Yeah, that goes back to, I mean, you just brought us back because in my opinion, that's all coming from these negative core beliefs, like that. So there's actually a couple different things that hit that: identity, attachment to identities, the negative core beliefs, and forgiveness. Like they could all trigger things in us that'll make us have those involuntary reactions in our stomach when I sit down with a client and we're going through my program. When we get to the attachment sections, I'll always ask them. I was like, all right, so what is your job? What do you do for a living? And if they're really good at it or something, I'll mess with them for a second. I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna mess with you, but I want you to understand that is I'm just messing with you, and it won't matter if I warn them or not. But I'll tell them you are really shitty at your job, and they will have a physical reaction in the middle of their gut that's involuntary. They know that I'm joking with them. They know I'm not serious. I'm not trying to be mean to them. And they will still have a physical reaction. And that is the subconscious mind trying to protect them. And then I'll ask them again, or I'll make another statement to them. I'll say, like, you are the shittiest attorney that I've ever met. And they'll just kind of giggle and whatever because they don't have a physical attachment to being an attorney. And then I walk through this a little bit more, and for me, this was extremely powerful when I figured it out because when I first took politics off my self map, my Christmas tree, and then I took off being a Titans football fan, and it was about a year and a half later that I came back to this, and I actually watched somebody I was teaching go through some of this, and she took everything off. She took being a daughter, she took being a dog mom, she took everything that she could possibly think of, being a good friend. And I was like, man, I just got showed up by this 21-year-old little girl going through my program here. I got to step it up. And my life changed so much after that because I took off being a husband. I took off being a dad, a grandfather, a COO of the company that I work for. And now all of a sudden, nobody could say anything to me and make me have that defense mechanism flare up in the middle of my stomach. It's like I could have somebody walk through my door at work and challenge me and like, Mike, you really screwed me on this deal. Like, rah, rah, rah. And I would just be able to sit there and go, all right, man, let's sit down. Let's talk through this. Let's figure out where I messed up, what we could do to make this right. But I wouldn't feel the need to defend myself. And it was like that with my kids, with my wife, every situation. As soon as I just took identities off of my away from my subconscious mind to try to protect, now all of a sudden life just got so much easier. I don't have to defend all of this stuff. And I became a better husband. I became a better COO. I became a better dad and grandfather because whenever somebody had something to approach me with that was a negative thing, I didn't take it as negative. I took it as an opportunity to get better. And my life just got so much better. All the relationships around me. And I felt better on the inside because I wasn't feeling attacked whenever somebody would talk to me about one of these things. And it's so liberating. And everybody needs to remove identities and allow their subconscious mind to be free. Because if I identify as a COO of Jarrett Companies, somebody walks through that door and challenges me, my subconscious mind is going to defend it as if my physical being is about as somebody put a gun to my head. There is no difference. It's going to try to protect me because it thinks the COO title it's protecting is my livelihood, is me,
Mm,
is the same thing as keeping my heart going. So it's very very important that we remove identities from our ego.
mm. One thing I think is challenging with working on a belief level is a lot of these things people can't see them directly. People
Yeah.
say that I'm a person of faith. Well, a person of faith is somebody who believes in the invisible. But you
Mm-hmm.
start to talk about beliefs and subconscious mind, and people can't see it, and quickly their faith disappears. But they've got to learn that it's often not a direct cause. What I mean is, let's say I have a belief that I'm not lovable.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about this on the surface level, but it will probably show up in our behaviors or in our
Yes.
language. How can people identify the invisible? So, down there at the subconscious level, there's this core belief that I'm not lovable. What does it look like on the surface?
So you're right. It shows up in random things. So like when I sit down with somebody and we get to week 8 of my program and I'm like, all right, you have all the manual tools, you've gone through it, removing attachments, we've worked on forgiveness. Now you're ready for the big stuff, right? This is why I created this program is to rewrite these things. And so basically what I ask, and I'll play this game with you for a second here. Like if you're having emotional responses in your life, which we all typically do, and you can trace most of these back by just simply realizing that when I was young, when you were young, you got into an elevated emotional state in your childhood. All right. Your mom, your dad, a scary situation that happened that left you traumatized. And it's usually somewhere between 2 and 7 years old. Typically, 4 or 5 is very common. And you got into an elevated emotional state. And usually, just me explaining this conversation, people will have one or two of those things start popping up in their head. And that type of a thing is very, very common. So, like, as I bring that up to you, are you having one pop up in your head, a very
Mm,
emotional
mm,
experience?
mm.
Would you mind telling
I,
me about it?
mm. I clearly remember spending time at my grandparents' house, and it was loneliness. It was being in the house all by myself, alone.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Mum's not there, dad's not there, grandmother's out knitting in the other part of the house, and I'm all alone. That's what comes up for me.
So I would say, so in those moments, how did that make you feel? I'm assuming abandoned, uh, not worthy of somebody spending time with you.
Like a form of love withheld,
Hmm. Yep.
alone,
Unlovable. If it
like,
falls in
yeah,
one of it would, yeah, yeah. Guess that. And
form of
so,
grief.
yeah. And so what happened in those moments where you got emotionally charged and you were left feeling, I would say, a combination of maybe unlovable or unworthy because nobody was spending time with you. You're like, where is everybody? I must not be lovable. I must not, be worthy of somebody hanging out with me. And you're scared for your safety and just compassion and love from somebody. That program stuck in there and it's been sitting with you every day since then. And it's when you, I imagine, whenever you get into a situation where your family's gone, where everybody's gone away from you, you're going to find that emotional thing, or you might see your kid scared, and that might trigger yours. Because a lot of what people don't realize is that latent energy that sits there, that old core belief that sits there, sometimes it'll get triggered when we start to see a familiar situation that might trigger that,
Mm,
or somebody else has latent energy, or somebody else is experiencing that energy and it gets transferred into your system, your energy system, and then phew, yours is going to trigger because theirs entered your system, triggering that same emotion. So your kids
mm,
could trigger that same emotion in you.
mm. Absorption. It's like being a magnet for other people's emotion.
Yep.
I have a business trip coming up, and it's going to be about 5 weeks. And I have to remind myself before I go on the trip that I will be lonely, and it's okay to be alone. And I know you've used my alignment assessment technologies. One of the
Yes,
core
I have.
emotions or frequent emotions that come up in my report is the fear of loneliness. And it's interesting that I go back to that memory to think that I'm all alone in that house, and
Mm-hmm.
that I've also been preparing for this on this new business trip that I'm going on. Because,
And that's scary and it's sad all at the same time. Like
yeah, I've
you're
got to
40,
leave
you're 46.
yeah, I got
You're
to leave the
46 years
family at
old. You
home. I got to
shouldn't.
leave the wife at
Yeah.
home. I'm going to go back on the road. It's 24 hours, a long time. Absolutely. I can see where it's connected to.
Yeah, and it sucks because even though you're a 46-year-old man, highly intelligent, you're very successful in the things you're doing. You're helping people all around the world with your protocol, getting the 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 vibrations into their head, and it's helping me. And yet you can't logic your way out of it. You can't think and make that stop. But you can use your imagination, go back to that moment alone in that house, forgive your parents for leaving you there, forgive your grandparents for not showing you love, and your grandmother just going off and not making you feel that way, and then forgiving yourself for not processing that information properly. And you know, because we're all kids and we get confused, and so some of that gets turned on ourselves. And I like to be very, very clear in any situation to just forgive everyone involved, just in case there's any level of guilt in there. And then you would never have to feel that way again, unless there was repeated situations where you felt like that a lot, and then you may have to go back to the same thing over and over and over again. But I would bet
Mm,
within 1 hour of doing a core belief, you can remove that, and it's not going to haunt you the same way anymore. You
mm,
when people go through this, they literally look back at their memories within 10 minutes, and they look back and go, man, I don't understand why that bothered me. That was so silly. They was like, man, I was just a kid and thing. I should have just been having fun and playing. I'm just a kid. Why was I so worried about what my grandma or what everybody else was doing? Why didn't I just go play on the farm and have fun?
mm,
Um, yeah, the memories they're immediately processed different because they're moved out of that fear bucket, putting into the love bucket. Subconscious mind's not holding on to it anymore, and hurting us. And it's such a liberating thing that literally everyone should go through. And I really commend you for just opening up about your own personal stuff on camera here, because that's a pretty powerful thing to do. So I commend you for
my pleasure. We'll crack the can open even more because,
that.
as you mentioned, repeated experiences. The next thing that popped into my mind was I used to travel around the country with my grandparents. And not long ago, might have been last year or early this year, my mum had sent photos of me traveling with my grandparents. And normally, holidays should have very special memories. Now, I know with my
Yep.
children, they go away, we go to Korea, we go to Japan, we go to Australia, and they got wonderful memories. my mum would send me these photos and I'd say, I know that's me in the photo, but I have no recollection
Mm,
other than loneliness. And I think about
yep.
some of these trips that I would have been on, and I can only imagine because, as you mentioned, children misremember things. But I would go on these long trips, a week, a month, multiple months at a time, but only
No
loneliness.
memories.
No,
Yeah.
nothing positive. And I said to my mum, I said, it must have been so traumatic for me because I don't have any memories of it. It's almost like I don't have access to it. I can see the
Yeah.
photos. I know where I am because I've been told that's where I was, but no joy in
Yep.
it, just loneliness. And that would have happened multiple times up to age 10 or 11.
So what I would say, Daniel, to that is that your connection with your grandparents was not a loving one at some level. They were not, you were not connecting with them. And I had a very, very similar experience from birth. I was able in a deep meditation to go all the way back to birth. And when I was born, I didn't make a connection with my mom or anyone. And ever since then, I anybody's having a baby, I tell them, please go skin to skin with the baby and talk to that baby because that's the only way you can comfort them. And for me, I was pissed. I was mad at everybody when I went back in my in, it, and had got access to those memories that were locked up. And yours memories are locked up right now, but you have access to all of them. You can gain access to all of them. But when I went back to that moment, I was pissed off at everybody. And I had to, as an infant on day one, I had to forgive the nurses. I had to forgive my mom. And I had to forgive everyone in that situation because they didn't make me feel loved. There was no connection. And unfortunately, my mom was going through a divorce when I was being born. She had 3 kids. She was doing the best she could. 21 years old. She's very young, and she was doing the best she could. And that's I had to forgive her for not making a connection with me. And at some level, I'm going to say that you and your grandparents, they didn't make you feel loved and safe. So that experience you had at the house was just a symptom of a much bigger thing. And I imagine if you sit here and you process some of that, you're going to dive back further to another core belief even earlier where you're with your grandparents and they're not connecting. You guys didn't connect, and yet you're traveling around the world with them. And that was terrifying for some little kid to travel around the world with grandparents that he didn't have a loving connection with.
Mhm. For my grandfather, there was just too many rules. He was ex Air
Hmm.
Force, and there was too many rules. Everything was so regimented.
Hmm.
That was a challenge. And then if I trace back the family history on my grandmother's side, even up until the time of her death, maybe last year, she still had the same behaviors. Big fence around the house, big house, close the door, don't turn off the lights, sit inside all alone. And how I saw her living her life is how I was living in their house at a young age. So for her,
Hmm.
I had entered into her environment. But for her, if we track it back, she was abandoned by her father when she was maybe 5 or 6. She was one of
Yeah.
6 children, and her father had abandoned the mum and the 6 children and
Yeah.
left and never came back. And about a decade later, she had happened to see the father walking down the opposite side of the street with an entirely new family.
Wow.
So if I track it back to her youth experience, she had love withheld,
Yeah.
she was abandoned, and
Yeah.
that's how she behaved. And when I went into her environment, that was totally normal for her,
Yes.
but very foreign for me.
which makes it very easy for you to forgive her, right? Like if you did have to
Mm.
go back and rewrite that old core belief or those old core beliefs, and that's very common with virtually everybody that come in contact with, as far as people that have treated you poorly, they were treated poorly. I mean, it's just the way that it goes, and it's very intuitive for you to understand that, and then it starts to unlock, and then it goes deeper, and then those memories, the way that let's just say you rewrote the first one, right, and then you go back to some of your trips, and those were challenging for you as well because they're all blocked out. Um, when if you went back to that earliest one, and then what would happen is your subconscious mind would reframe that all now with compassion, love, and forgiveness and move it over here, and every memory related to that would now be impacted by that. And after about two or three of these, it doesn't take very long, the subconscious mind goes, all right, my job is to protect you, and I see what you're doing here. You just freed me from those three moments that I don't have to protect you from anymore. All right, I'm going to open up that memory that's blocking you from all those memories, and I'm going to open you up to a couple more, and I'm going to let you see those. Let's you work through those, and then I'll open up another one, and then I'll open up another one. And that's what happened with me. I started going back further and further and further, and I finally got to that 5 year old that couldn't read, and then I went back to the 18-month-old kid when my mom was leaving, my dad was leaving my mom, and then I went back to birth, and I went back to these moments, and I was like, is this real? Like, is this really happening? Am I really getting these memories right? You know, and but it didn't matter if I was getting it right, because when I reframed it all, it you don't, that you got it right at the end of the day. When you reframe the whole thing with compassion, love, and forgiveness, it moves it over here into the love bucket, and now you're walking through your days, you're just feeling lighter. You got it right, that you're not even guessing, because the all the negative thoughts, when you travel the next time, now all of a sudden you're not scared of being lonely because you're about to leave your family. It's okay. It's not the thing. When I try to start a new business, or I try to do something now, I don't have any of those thoughts that says I'm dumb and I can't do it. And up to 47 years old, I was infected by it. And it's just liberating to get rid of those at the root cause.
Mm. And it's like an infection because when I think about this at the moment, I look at friendships and girlfriends. Okay, well, I was probably
Yeah.
with that girlfriend because it was better to be with her than to be alone.
Yep.
It was better to have,
Yeah.
and this is no disrespect to any of them, less than what I would desire. But
Yeah.
it's better to have something than nothing, and the nothingness is loneliness. And I
Yes.
can see that, and I think about, what about these patterns of friends? Well, if the internal state was different and I didn't fear the loneliness, there's no way I would have been friends with him because I wouldn't
Yep.
have wasted my time. But better off to be around someone than being alone. And
Yeah.
I think if all of us look at our relationships, this might be part of our presenting problem. We've settled for less because of an emotion. For this example, for me, well, for loneliness, I can either have that or I can be with somebody who's far below what I desire. Okay, I'll take far below what I desire because that's better than loneliness.
Loneliness. Yeah.
I can
That's
see that.
sad, right? That
Oh, good
makes
looking
you, I mean,
girls.
that's,
They had good bodies, but
yeah.
they weren't everything that I wanted. And that's not a reflection on them. That's me
No.
and what I desire because we all have our own taste. Everybody has their own taste in music.
Right.
Everybody has their own taste in partners. But I can see that clearly. She was good. She was good looking. But the
Yeah.
loneliness, that was worse.
Yeah. That fill the void is all it did. Yeah. You weren't attracted to her entire being, but yeah, you made a choice. You made a choice to fill the void over here, you know, and compromise yourself on the other side. And that's, you know, when I when I was suffering from anxiety and depression for up all the way up to I was 45 years old, and I literally accomplished everything out there in the physical world that I could. I made the money, had the house, had the my wife able to stay at home, the kids are healthy, happy, and at that point when I realized there was nothing else to go chase, that's when the noise in my head was louder than it had ever been. And I told my boss and good friend that I was going to quiet my mind by any means necessary, and I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I was going to do it. And I turned my focus from the outside world and turned it inward. And then I started having revelations like you're talking through right now, and being able to identify this stuff and have that self-awareness, that is the key. That's the starting point. If anybody is struggling with anxiety and depression, having the awareness of what we're talking about right here and being able to self-reflect on yourself and say, all right, where's all this stuff coming from? And then you could take that information and take action instead of living on autopilot, because science is proving right now that we live 95% of our days subconsciously. We eat subconsciously, we walk, talk, drive, we do everything subconsciously. And so once we get a program going, it just lives it for us. And we live 5% of our days unconscious or consciously. And those are powerful moments because we could change. But right now, in that moment when you were sitting there explaining your childhood, you were conscious. You were consciously aware of what was happening. You were reliving it. It's a new experience for you to think in that way. And now all of a sudden you're changing. You're creating new neural pathways. You understand it with a different perspective. You are becoming healthier because of your awareness. And that's where everybody needs to start, is just having that moment of, this is what's actually happening right now,
Mm,
not running
mm,
away from it because it's scary.
mm. And it is scary. I've
It
traveled the
is.
world as cabin crew with Emirates Airline, and we would be in a different part of the world twice a week. Might be Monday
Yeah.
morning, and I start my life in Dubai. I hop onto an aircraft. I've got 17 colleagues who I don't know. I got 400 customers who I don't know, and I've got to fly to New York, and I'm going to be in New York for 48 hours. And sometimes I would stay in my room because I was tired, because I was jet lagged. Other times I'd stay in my room because I was just used to loneliness. Okay, I'll just sit in the room, I'll just study. But I could have also been out there enjoying other people's company.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then I'd hop on the aircraft back to Dubai. And then a couple of days later, I'd be in Johannesburg in South Africa. Same choice. I could sit in the room or I
Yeah.
could go out with the crew. And I've seen this in many, many cycles, even into the business world. Sometimes I would prefer loneliness, which is not a bad thing because I'm very introverted
Mm.
by nature, meaning that I like to process information internally. I like to escape the noise of the world and process it internally. But on my upcoming trip, I've got 5 weeks and I'm actually really excited not to have too much alone time. For example, when I go to Melbourne, I'll fly in on a Saturday, I'll depart on the Saturday, and I've got appointments all day, every day. And I'm excited because I'll be in people's presence and the right
Yeah.
people this time. And I think this is a key thing as well is we've got to get around the right people. I have been around the
Yeah.
wrong people and felt lonely. And that's a big,
Yeah.
it's a big insight from the unconscious mind saying, these are the wrong people. But the right people, I never feel lonely around. I feel fulfilled,
Yeah.
enough, loved, welcomed, worthy. Now
Yeah.
I've just got to make sure that for the other 4 weeks that I'm there, my schedule's chock a block because I'm more conscious now. Yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
Yeah. And
Quickly
and that
opens
old
up the
stuff,
eyes.
it does. And the subconscious mind is still it's gonna bring up those loneliness feelings for you, especially when you're not around, the good people that you're talking about. But you can get rid of them. And that's the other thing, is that it's scary, right? For everyone that's suffering with anxiety and depression. Okay, so once you identify it, the next question is, what do I do with it? All right. What do I do with it? Now that I'm aware of it, what do I do with it? How does this work? And that's where you need help. All right. We need help. This isn't logical stuff. Well, it is very logical. Let me reframe that. It is very logical, but nobody's been teaching this. The Buddhists have been teaching most of this stuff, and it's mixed in the Bible, and it's cryptic in the Bible. Um, the Buddhists have been teaching this for a long time, and that's where a lot of where I turned when I started figuring this out. But like the rewriting core beliefs, the Buddhists have been doing a form of this for 2,500 years, and there's various other types of way. There's EDMR, um, and there's probably 7 or 8 that are well documented that work, that open up the subconscious mind, go back, find those negative core beliefs. It allows you to reframe them to where they're not going to haunt you anymore. I created a writing exercise that I typically want people to do it with me the first time, but then after that, they could do it as many times as they want for the rest of their life, and it's free. Um, and so when you do have that awareness, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to search out somebody like me that has a program that helps people with this, or wherever you're at. Just don't try to do it on your own. You do need help, because had I not found help, if I not found Chris Hancock, an energy healer here in Franklin, Tennessee, I'd still be suffering, because this is where the healing is coming from. Is you got to go back and get that, go back to the pain at its root to really free yourself from it.
Mhm. I remember I was working with a young man, and he had a couple of limiting beliefs, bullshit stories about his ability to make the type of money that he wanted. And when we got to the core of it, the emotional memory was the death of his father. And when his father died, his father just left a lot of debt. And his original thought was, we will never get out of debt. We will never prosper. We will never have enough. We'll never own our own home.
Yeah.
And even as an adult, logically, he knew it made no logical sense. But emotionally,
Yeah.
it trapped him. And he said, I feel like I'm anchored into the past. Yes, I'm 40, but I feel like that 7-year-old boy trapped in time, and I can't move forward. And he could have the best marketing campaigns, he could have the best brand, and nothing would work for him. And as he started to challenge those beliefs and release the limiting beliefs, his income started to go up. He went from a real estate agent who was struggling to get leads, who was working for family, to eventually buying the office, buying the rent roll, buying his own business, employing 14 people, buying his mum a house, clearing all of his debt, and financially free before he was even in his mid-40s. And it all happened in a couple of years because he got rid of those core beliefs. Yes. And all of us, if we thought through our own bullshit stories, there's a little story there that we tell ourselves about why we can't have what we want. And I think we all secretly know that if we just got rid of that, everything else would take care of itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to also come to the realization that we need help to overcome it. It's like a doctor. I could be the best brain surgeon in the world, but I can't operate on my own brain. I could be the best heart surgeon in the world, but I can't operate on my own heart. Yep. I could be the person who does the best. What's the one where they put the camera down your nose? Well, the other one's the colonoscopy. Okay, let's talk about that. I could be the best in town doing the colonoscopy, but I probably can't do it myself.
You don't want to.
Don't want to do that.
Mistake there.
Well, last time I got a colonoscopy, the doctor said to me, he said, do you want to watch the video? And I said, not really. He said, well, I'll take some photos for you. And he took some photos, and at the end of the procedure, he gave me a photo and he said, you've got a cute little freckle in your colon. And he gave me a photo of it. I
Wow.
said, well, thank you so much. I'll have to wear that like a badge of honor. The boy with a cute colon, little freckle there.
Oh, that's
Mike,
funny.
a lot of people, they get to their mid-40s. They have had life experiences that have held them back, and they start to build up, in my opinion, like plaque on the back of your teeth.
Yeah.
They just start to gradually build up, and it starts to calcify, and we realize that we need some support. Where can they start their journey with you? Where can they learn more about the work that you're doing?
Learn to love being you.com is where you could find my 10-week program. And Mike at learn to love being you.com is if you just want to reach out, talk through it, whatever you're going through. I'm happy to talk through whatever it is, make sure it's a right fit for you. Um, but yeah, reach out, man. Like at the end of the day, you're not broken. Like whoever's out there suffering, you're not broken. You just don't understand how your system is operating. And once you understand it, it's very logical. It's very simple. You just have the courage. You just have to have the courage and self awareness to turn your focus inward and do exactly what Daniel did today and just track it down to its source. And then from that point, you just have to do the core belief session for each one of those individual memories. And it's liberating. It's absolutely liberating.
Do it. Mike, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. I've really enjoyed talking to you, buddy.